Are we live, Bobby?
I think we're live. Are we live on this new thing we got going on, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's get the party started.
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody to All Things Recon. This is our monthly podcast going over all things related to used car reconditioning in the automotive world. And today's topic is about how to have the perfect recon meeting. What should be the topic of discussion? Who should be in the meeting? What should be the patterns and behaviors and sort of what should be the data and documentation that you're looking at? And uh, ultimately, how do you get your team all aligned in a regular basis to not only address some of the concerns you may see in your reporting, but also to prepare them for the week or the month's work ahead? And we have observed in our time, both Bobby and me, both Bobby and I, a a tendency for the best dealers, the dealers who really do the best with reconditioning, to have regular recon meetings with all of their relevant leadership. So you'd see the service manager, recon manager, used car manager, and we have found that those dealers that make an attempt to have these meetings on a regular basis, where they not only look through the process as it has been, but as it is going to be as well, that is sort of the mark for us of, or one of the marks of a dealer that we know is going to do exceptionally well, not only with our tools that we have, but also with recon in general.
Yeah, I know that meeting, that meeting, who wants to go to another meeting, right? But I think what's important is, that meeting could be 10 minutes long. That meeting could be 30 minutes long. It could be a quick stand-up meeting, right? And, when we use tools to measure our recon process, the whole scope and what's really advantageous about having a tool to measure your recon process is, you have a problem after 2 hours and not 2 weeks, right? Or you have a problem after 2 days, and you're not having it's the end of the world meeting after cars have been cooking, stalled in steps way too late. By the time your meeting has an impact, it's a lot of money's been taken up in holding costs and depreciation and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. You have a meeting like this so you don't have to have an emergency meeting later. You don't have to call people into your office unexpectedly to go over something that may have gone through the shop and then come back because of a customer complaint or a unit that we've been waiting on parts for forever, and it's just been sitting there out there on the lot, and actually the parts have arrived already, but why hadn't we done this? Well, we can avoid having to have those conversations if we've already had in place a typical regular discussion between all the relevant team members. And like Bobby said, it doesn't have to be a long meeting. It can be a 15, 20-minute, 10-minute stand up. Depending on what's going on in the process, that's ultimately what's going to dictate how you end up going about the meeting. But in the beginning, in the early stages, if this is the first time you're having a regular meeting and you're looking at your reporting data for the first time with your teammates, and you're trying to figure out how can we improve, then it might take a little bit longer that first time, because for the very first time, you're all meeting together as a team to discuss the whole process. But after that first and second meeting, you'll start to see it becomes a lot more regular. We're only going to be focusing on certain individual units or certain parts of our reporting to sort of align the team going forward. And that doesn't have to be a long process at all. But what's more important than anything is developing that good rapport between everybody who's going to be a part of the process. And this meeting is a great way to reemphasize that we're all working together on as a team, and that even though different departments and different individuals have different ultimate responsibilities to the dealership, in reconditioning, we are all aligned, right? Everybody benefits when the used cars get to the front line faster. The service benefits, the sales benefits, everybody in every department gets a little piece of that pie. So that's why we want to have a meeting like this as regularly as possible, while also being cognizant of people's time, because that's what's going to give us that repetitive alignment of the team that keeps everybody on the same page about what exactly we're trying to accomplish here.
And Josh, before you go further, I want to invite people down to feel free to chime in, ask questions. We're open to anything you guys want to discuss. Obviously the pivot of this meeting is based on the communication of the process, by way of having good effective recon meetings. But kind of what Josh was talking about too, is you the importance. Obviously, somewhere along the line, dealerships figure out how important recon is, right? How getting cars frontline faster. We all know the science, or should know the science. And one thing that we do know for a fact is the hundreds of thousands, and in some cases millions of dollars a year, that doing recon effectively brings to the dealership. And it's not just money in the owner's pocket, right? It's more cars coming through the shop. Cars, you can sell them faster. You need to keep your inventory up, so they're replacing those cars faster. They're making more money on the cars they sell, and ultimately more money. More cars come through the shop. There's more hours to be turned. But having the effective meetings, this is make sure that there's a culture. Make sure that there's an idea that recon is important enough to build a culture around the process. And this is where you have the dedicated team. If you don't have a dedicated team, hey, somebody in the dealership's full-time job should be paying attention to recon, whether that's the internal advisor, service manager, or advisors that tag team it. But regardless, it needs a full-time focus, right? Because we already know that your internal dollars make up, what in some cases up to 30% of your whole fixed ops revenue, right? The number one customer for the service side of the dealership is the used car department. So as you guys build a culture around it, and Josh, didn't mean to steal your thunder a little bit here, but
No,
I,
we're in the same storm, Bobby.
but having you have it, have your team, people who are focused on it, have a tool to measure it, whether it's rapid recon velocity, right? You have that in place. The third thing to do is build a culture around it, and let's when we can have tools that can tell us, hey, we got a problem, and it's because a car turned red, or maybe 15 cars turned red in detail because they've been there for more than 24 hours, right? Now we're talking about a 24-hour problem, and we're not 24 days out trying to wrapping our heads around, oh, why are we 15, why is our time to line, or our retail ready, or average days in recon 12 days? How do we get to 5 or less? Well, we don't want to be talking about that a month later. We have a tool that will raise the flag when you start to bottleneck much sooner. So let's discuss how we can impact those parts of the processes that we see the bottlenecks.
Exactly. Now, not everybody on this call, or maybe not everybody on this call, is already a customer with Rapid or Velocity. Some of you may have joined just because you're interested in improving with recon in general, or maybe you just wanted to see what this podcast was all about. But just to give you some context for those of you who don't, we are with Rapid Recon. We are a product underneath the Velo umbrella, and with Velocity, and both of those products organize reconditioning into approachable workflows. So for those of you that are on the call that already have these tools, for those of you that don't, just imagine those tools that you do have in place. If you have Rapid, if you have Velocity, if you're just working off of a spreadsheet, or if you don't even have a tool at all, if maybe you just have a whiteboard where everything goes, or you have several different ways in your dealership of tracking reconditioning. As we talk about, how to organize your meeting, whatever tools you rely on, you need to have them publicly displayed in this meeting for everyone to see, so that everyone can make their own judgments about the data that's present there. And that can also be helpful for giving everybody the feeling that they are literally on the same page. They're working off of the exact same documentation, which reflects their entire process. So for those of you who may not have a tool, or if you don't have a comprehensive documentation process, it's something that you really need to consider doubling down on, because otherwise you won't be able to have the real data to be able to make this meeting happen. The meeting there needs two things to really be effective. You need the important individuals to be together, and then second of all, you need good data. And once you have those two things, you can really get your recon process moving in your dealership. And at Rapid, what we do, or at Velocity, what we do is, once we've installed this tool or our tools into a dealership, the very next step is to look at that reporting after enough time has passed, and we need to make sure, first of all, that everybody's working and consistently reporting back to the tool, or documenting things the way that it's expected to be. And if you know that your team is following through on their documentation the way they need to be, then you have good data. Then you can bring your people together and you can really, really make some awesome and effective choices or changes to your process. And oftentimes it's subtle things, it's little things that come up, and you only notice them because you have these regular meetings, because you address the cars that are bottlenecking, you address the cars that are presenting issues. So let's move on a little bit here so we can
Hey,
give some more context. Go ahead,
hey,
Bobby.
Josh, I'm going to jump in here. I got Steve Ward asked a question in the question query. Appreciate that, Steve. A question for dealers: how many are giving their service department a pre-approved dollar limit for pre-approved recon items that can be done without prior approval? I love that. That I consider a best practice. Okay, if you can, kind of give your either share with the service team, what it's, I know it's scary. It's a double-edged sword. Okay, and here's why. Let's say I give my service department anything $1,500 or more. I'm going to need to approve it, and if it's $1,500 or less, just go ahead and roll it, get the car through the process. Um, some sales or some of the used car teams may think, well, they're going to make it so that everything costs me $1,500, right? My cream puff that comes in and all it needs is an oil change and an air filter, I can get it done for, and then plus the inspection I can get done for $600 or less, or a couple $100. Throw them a bone every now and then, but I do like that. I would say a lot of the dealer, I would say, Josh, what do you think? I'd say maybe 2 out of every 10 dealerships
Yeah, I was going to
may.
say around 15 to 30%, 30% being the absolute like highest that it could be of dealers that
Yeah,
I've personally interacted with that had that policy. I will say that context is key in everything when it comes to recon, and especially with
yeah.
this question. I've seen situations where it is something that is prescribed from on high. So neither the used car team or the used car sales team or the service team actually agreed to this. They were just told this is the case. And so in those situations, you might have tickets that are inflated because service knows that the expectation is that this is the acceptable amount for a internal ticket. And so, you might have cases where the used car team ends up paying a lot more in value than they necessarily need to.
This is where the used car sales side and the service side need to go out and have beers, right?
Exactly, the
Because
rapport needs to be there ahead of time. You
we
can't.
got to
It
figure
can't.
out. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's best if you have that policy established once you and your service team are already working on the same level, and you don't have any, like, if you already 99% of the tickets, you once you see them, you're like, okay, this is all good. There's very few things I want to decline. Like if you already have that good relationship, then it can be really nice to have that threshold in place because then you're not wasting anyone's time. They already understand what you're willing to pay for recon and they just push the car forward.
I
But
have
if
an
you don't,
idea.
go ahead, Bobby.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Josh, but I have an
Oh, no,
idea.
I was just
This
yeah, go ahead.
some the concept here's kind of cool concept. Yes, build a relationship. Okay, that it's usually contentious, right? Because what you do have is a collision of pay plans. The used car department wants to spend the least amount of money on their cars. The service side wants to turn as many hours as possible, right? But hey, guess what? You can sure bet that your used car department will be pumping, in some cases, hundreds of cars,
Right.
120 cars through your shop and spending an average of, maybe 12, 15, $1,800. If you're off, if you're depending on your OEM, in some cases, if you're a German brand, I've seen, two $2,500 on average, depending on the business model. But hey, there's not a bigger customer that goes through the shop or puts more cars through the shop than the used car department. So it
Exactly.
is worthy of building a culture around it, and they should be on the same team. But how do you do that with the collision of pay plans? What if a function or a component of the service side's bonus perk, if you guys are tying pay plans to doing recon well, why don't you make it a function of used car gross? Right? So, holy cow, what do you mean? Well, it could be back into the percentage or whatever you want that to be. Wouldn't it be a great idea that, hey, the internal advisors or the used car team or your dedicated team, they get an extra, let's say $500 a month, or a certain percentage of used car gross. So they start to get the mindset that, hey, if I can get it so that the sales department is in this car better before they sell it and they make more profit, my little perk at the end of the month is actually a function of used car gross.
Yeah.
So
So
I know it's a
there's a
little
way
bit
to
of
build.
outside
Oh,
the
go ahead.
box thinking with that, but that will kind of get everybody on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a way to build incentives there for the service team, and also the primary, I'd say the primary aim for both the used cars and service in this case should be to get as many units into and out of the shop as possible, as many internal units into and out of the shop as possible.
Mhm.
So for service, the pure volume of work is what's going to offset what they might, lose treating the cars, a little bit more, or backing off of the estimates a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's all about that rapport. And then if you need to, you can build in incentive structures into your payment plans as well that will ultimately offset any troubles that may come from, just relying on rapport, or relying on relationship. If you want to make it a process thing, then what Bobby said, I think, is a great suggestion: is make the bonus incentives of your recon managers, if those exist, make those contingent upon a certain percentage of used car gross being achieved or not.
Yeah, and Steve had another question. Does anybody use a flat recon fee per car that is adjusted based on the actual average recon dollars regularly? I find that the numbers can vary. Some of it's very small, like I think somebody else, Tommy, chimed in with the $300 and under, which is pretty low. It looks like just an inspection and an oil change at best. And some dealerships I've seen, if they're under 1,500 or under 1,000, 800, you see that a lot. I don't know. I haven't heard, Steve, if there's any indication if they weigh that against an average and then kind of adjust it accordingly. But no, I haven't heard that. So I've just heard flat amounts.
That would be probably how that decision gets arrived at, though, I would
Yeah.
imagine, is if they look at a percentage over maybe a 6 month or year long period, or I should say
Mhm.
average, and then decide from there. But that, I think, is definitely, that's something we could go deeper into. I think, Bobby, maybe with Bradley in the future, if we bring him on as a
Sure.
guest, he could
Sure.
discuss a little bit about if he's ever arrived at a threshold in the past. How did he come to that decision?
Yeah. And sometimes, a lot of it's how are they in the car? How did they acquire the car in the first place? Are they in it
Right.
deep? Are they in it right? If they're not in it right, they can't even $800 is a lot of money, right? Or sometimes, hey, they're in it really good and they know they got the room to spend 3 grand, but hey, if they can get off the hook for 1,200, that'd be awesome, right? So I know it can vary from car to car, but it's that delicate dance of if we give them the $1,500 allowance and all of a sudden everything costs me $1,500. So we got to build the relationship, build the culture, and maybe, hey, make a part of the pay plan perk a function of used car gross, which is, I think, pretty radical thinking. I think that's a great idea. So,
So, yeah,
but kind of swinging back to your meetings, Josh. One of the things, we always tell dealerships to do well. You know, let's get a couple things straight. Start on day zero, right? If car's here and ready to go, let's figure out how to get it into the damn shop as soon as possible. That's a metric. And whenever I look at, and I've said this before, and Josh, you heard it a million times out of me as well. Start on day zero. There's two things to do well. Start on day zero. If the car's here, whatever, let's not wait or just whatever to get it into the shop or get it into the process. Okay. The second thing to do well is approve work in a timely fashion. And those two things should be aligned. I think we can agree. Used car managers, you got no business guns ablazing looking for your cars if you are slow at approving work. Okay, that is super important. And I can probably see a bunch of service guys, being pretty happy about that statement, because you don't really realize it, right? But your delay in approval times will increase parts hold, you start to miss parts cutoff times, and it just creates a general inconvenience for the technicians. If they know that routinely they're not going to hear back to the next day, that they're on the estimate, they're just going to park the car outside, keys on the bench, and they're on to the next. And now what happens? They're 3 or 4 cars deep because they kept going, right? And then they heard back about the estimate, from 3 days ago, and then it's enough. Now we order parts. Now we got to wait another 2 days. It really just inflates and bogs down the process. So managers, please make sure you're approving work fast. When all that is in place, maybe that's what your meeting can be about. Hey, what do we need? What do you need from us to you know approve work? And I get it. We're not the only thing going. If you're managing salespeople, you're trying to sell cars, you're desking deals, you're running outside to appraise trades or whatever. We get it. That's why I love the allowance. and then, hey, there's a tool which which we represent, Rapid Recon and Recon Velocity, that allows you in one spot to look when you are free for a second to just go in and boom, boom, boom. I know there's sometimes cars you got to think about. If you're squeakers and man, I don't know if I should put this money in it. Let me talk to my GM, or let me talk to somebody else who might have an opinion on, should we put this much money in a car? But please be fast at approving work, which should be minutes, not hours, and definitely not days.
Yeah, and I've said this before as well as an addendum, but the the your the timeliness with which the sales team responds to questions and inquiries from the service team with regards to the internals, that engenders a sense of urgency all throughout the process. If you're quick with that, if you're quick with answers and quick with your responses, and it shows that you're looking and you care about these cars, then they will start to take it seriously. I guarantee you. And one of the first things we always hear from technicians when we install a tool is usually if there is a problem with approvals, is that they'll mention that right away. They'll say, "Well, I don't know why we're doing this. If it's going to take 6 to 8 hours for an approval, or if it's going to take 2 or 3 days for an approval." So they pay attention to that, is what I'm trying to say. Is the technicians, the service advisors, they pay attention to how long it takes to get those approvals back. And when they come really quickly, that's when they know that you're looking and that you care about these cars. And for the service people, I think I've said this before too. They should imagine, especially if you're a used car manager here on this call, they should imagine that you are in those cars, that you are literally in the car waiting for them to get the work done, or that you are a service waiter like that you're sitting in the service waiting. And if you really want to have a fun day, go to your dealership when the service drive is opening up, and just sit in one of the cars that's on your trade walk, or that's on your line for the technicians to inspect that day. Just see how long it takes for someone to come out and get the car inspected. It's it What Bobby's talking about is exactly right. You want to start on day one, and in order to do that, you need to make sure that the service people, the technicians, and everyone else understands that you care about these units almost as much as a customer does. Obviously they care more about the unit that, or the car that they're taking to and from work every day, but you care almost as much, and you're just as important as they are, because you're in some cases 20 to 30% of all the revenue that service is going to make in a year. So,
Used cars is a big deal, a
yeah,
big
so take
deal.
it serious, and and don't be afraid to stand up for your inventory. And of course, take that time that you do need to handle those approvals, because it will 100% help everybody down the line understand how important this is. Um, and
Great.
that's go ahead, Bobby.
No, no. So great. So let's start off our meetings with looking at two things. How good are we at starting on day zero? And how good are we at approving work? And then everything else, guys, is bottleneck management, right? It's just, oh, let's look at this. Why does it take a day for a 24-hour period of time to figure out which technician is going to work on the car? Because sometimes in your workflow, you see you got 12 cars and then you got technicians with no cars, right? So let's make sure, it's a hot potato. It's the transfer of accountability. Let's make sure we get cars into the process. Get the faster and quicker you get them inspected, the earlier you're ordering parts and the quicker parts are coming in. So yeah, start off your perfect meeting with those two metrics. That would be our recommendation. And then you can, if you have a tool like Rapid Recon or Recon Velocity, then you hit all your hot spots, right? Well, what's going on with detail? Or sometimes you got to take a look at some things. Because sometimes, especially in Rapid, because they don't give you hours, they just give you a fraction of a day. Sometimes, it depends on what's going on in the step. You can look down your workflow and you see point 0.3. Oh, that's a low number. But the problem is it's point 0.3 in the approval bucket, right? So 72 cars went through this step last month, and on average, it took us point 0.3 days to approve work. Well, what does that look like? That's 8 hours. That's seven and change, 8 hours. That's damn near a whole workday, and is absolutely enough time to miss a parts cutoff time or to create inconvenience for the technicians, right? So, you got to figure out as you look through your bottleneck, as you're having your meeting, make sure that we're approving work in a timely fashion. So you get point 0 something, or not, point 1 is even 2.5 hours, right? Um, and then, making sure we're starting the process. For those dealerships out there that are doing detail and pictures before the shop, make sure you are blazing fast. you have to be blazing fast at that. And if you're not, then that's what your meeting needs to be about, right? And have your meetings often. Having the meeting once a week, 7 days could be a long time to know that, hey, my kid has a fever, which, we have a problem here and I don't know why. And we're going to talk about it 7 days later, right? So maybe the perfect meeting is a quick 10-minute stand-up meeting, whether it's daily or every other day, with your key people, your internal advisor, your used car manager, and maybe if you have an elf guy or a lead tech, probably that internal guy. It could be just a couple people in the meeting, but take a look at some things. Take a look at your metrics and discuss, are we going to talk about it, or are we going to wait 7 days or half a month to realize that we have a bottleneck in detail, right?
Yeah.
And
And if, oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No,
I
no,
was going
go
to
ahead.
say,
And
if you're working with Rapid or Velocity, you have access right off the bat. I would say look at your workflow. Look at what's currently going on in Recon right now, and especially for both of those programs, you have a column that tells you for which of those units in each step are aging out of the process. They're going over their time. Those are the units that I would address first. And the first thing that we want to look for is, do we have any documentation giving us context for what's going on with those units? And if we don't, then we need to ask the people in the meeting what's going on. Otherwise, we just need to confirm what we see there in the notes or in the field where we're documenting that work or the situation with the car. And the reason that we're going to do this is so that everybody on the team is aware of which units are already aging out, which ones we need to make a priority as they come down the process. But also, it allows us as a team to start recognizing patterns. Are there any issues that keep coming up? For instance, are we missing keys regularly? Is the car not parked where it needs to be regularly? Are we taking too long to dispatch units, or are we taking some of our used car techs and putting them on the main line? There's a million different things that can affect the way things flow from one individual or one department to the next. But if we don't have that meeting and we don't have the individuals in place to discuss these things, we'll never notice those patterns emerging. So that's one. That's where I would start the meeting. Is obviously you want to look at what's incoming right now. Is there anything that we haven't that's arrived at the dealership that hasn't been pushed forward yet? Address that. Go ahead and push those into the process, and then look for your approvals. Is there anything that we need to approve right now that it hasn't been approved? And then look at your workflow. Look at your current workflow. Look for any current obvious bottlenecks or any units that are currently going over time, and identify those and what they're going to need going forward. And so that's how this can turn that is a great example of how this meeting can be more useful on a regular daily or semi weekly basis, just for in process things that are happening. But the
yeah, and
second thing you should do, oh, I'm sorry, Bobby. I just
no,
wanted
no,
to,
you go. No, no, I stepped on you, bud. You go.
no, it's okay. So the second thing you should do after you've looked at your main workflow is you should look at the reporting together with your team. In Rapid and Velocity, they both have reporting available that's going to be able to show you over the last month, over the last week, whatever time frame you want to look at, how is our team performing overall. And the goal here, y'all, is I'm going to put this is on the final last slide, is accommodation, right? We're trying to accommodate our team, figure out what it is that they need. We're not trying to find our weakest link and push them down or anything like that, or make anyone feel like they're like we need to pick up their slack. We just need to figure out, if there are delays happening or if there is some kind of continuous pattern emerging, how can we address that as a team? And it can, for a lot of dealers, not as often as it used to be in the past, but for some of them, there's a trepidation about being able to have these sort of stand up meetings where everyone is just working together as a team, because the concern is that fingers are going to get pointed and some people's feelings are going to get hurt, and it's going to end up being something awkward or tension filled. And I think the way you get around that is you put your team together on one platform. You have everybody answer to the same expectation that you're responsible for your step and the units that are in your step. And when people feel individually responsible for just their part of the process and they move the cars forward, knowing that hey, I've done my part and I've documented everything and this is what's going on with the car, it makes it so much easier to have a meeting like this because everyone already understands that they've done the very best they can to be honest and upfront and transparent about the work that they've done. And really, it just comes down to, if you invest in a tool like this, or if you have any sort of schema for documenting your work, any sort of system that you use, it's important that you as leaders stand behind that system 100%, and you expect your people to conform to the basics of documenting their work within that system. And when you do that, that's when you start to unlock the possibilities of being able to have a meeting like this where everyone can be open and honest and transparent, and we can accommodate one another as team members rather than condemn one another as competitors.
We find too a lot of bottlenecks, guys. It could be some things you never realized. Holy crap! I never realized it took this much time for the sales to get the service, the keys, and the packets, and everything else that happens in your dealership. And it's usually bottlenecks sometimes aren't just. It's not rarely a function that anybody sucks or anybody's just like you said, Josh, slow. You put a little
Very
nice,
rarely.
right? It's usually a lack of communication. So but in this meeting, you can discuss, hey, look at we got all these cars in the hopper. Here's a couple bottlenecks. Let's have a conversation. Oh, I got two new guys in detail that didn't done, they need to have access to it and they need to push car. Oh, great, no problem. That's a quick resolution. Or hey, is it, do we have operational behaviors that are keeping us from being good, or do we lack resources like enough shop vacs in the detail department? Or is it a third party and they only have one guy, they only have one or two guys on a lot, they need three or four, right? That's what these tools allow you to do. And let's have the conversation. We can either, work on staffing issues, but you want to rule out some things. You want to rule out, hey, are we being efficient? Do we have an efficient, urgent mentality of urgency, or do we have a lack of capital or people? And then that's a perfect way to address those issues. Josh, you can attest. Even sometimes by turning the tool on and having transparency, it almost cuts recon in half. So I feel a lot of struggles with bottlenecks and dealerships is communication, which is why the perfect recon meeting is such a good topic.
Yeah, and I think, Bobby, to that point, I think you and I've had moments individually where we've led a kickoff meeting, and just a single kickoff meeting to start the process of
Yeah.
installing rapid or velocity. And just because of the conversation that happened in that room,
Yeah.
we shaved off 5 or 6 days off.
It became their recon. It became their recon meeting, right?
That
Even though
was the recon
we're
meeting.
we're
Exactly.
trying to we're trying to figure out how to set up their tool, and then they're talking about their process, and they're going, "Holy crap! What do you mean this happens? What do you mean
Yes.
this happens?" Right?
Yeah.
Because they may have failed to have recon meetings, right? So they're important. Nobody wants to have another meeting, but hey, it could be a short, quick 10-minute stand up meeting a couple times a week or on a daily basis. Hey, let's all, if you're doing a trade walk, great. Let's communicate the game plan. Look at you guys are looking. What do we need to figure out for detail? How can we speed you guys up? How can we help? What do you guys need? Right. And a lot of times, oh, okay, I didn't realize this. And then it's fixed. Crazy that we would wait till a middle of the month or the end of the month before we address these things. So I'm a fan of the 10-minute stand-up meetings, and rule out your starting on day zero and your approval times, and those are aligned. But yeah, look at your bottlenecks and have some good conversation about how you can just stay on top of things.
And always focus on the controllables first. I had a meeting the other day where we were going over the reporting from Rapid Recon, and the very first question. This is the first meeting that this customer was having about performance and about the reporting. And the very first thing they wanted to look at was the technicians. But I showed them that once the technicians are done with the work, it's actually taking us about 8 hours to decide what happens with the car from there. Are we sending it to detail? Does it need to go to the body shop? Does
Yep.
it need to see one of our vendors? Why would it take us 8 hours to do that? Or, it's taking us on average, 10 to 12 hours to get an approval done. So before we look at the technicians, before we look at the big stuff in our process that we know is going to be contingent on multiple factors, whereas with a technician, for instance, you've got that technician's level of experience. You've got, hey, are they working for the main line as well? Hey, what kind of cars are they seeing? Are they familiar with the makes and models that we have access to? Are we trading for most of our cars, or are we getting them from the auction? There's so many things that go into how long it's going to take a technician to get an inspection done, and a lot of it has to do with that particular tech's attitude and their experience level. But when it comes to little things like how long does it take us to compile an estimate once the pricing's there, That's something we
Mm.
can easily control. That's something we can even put a number on. Oh, well, it should take about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, well, that should be maybe our maximum goal for that step should be 15 minutes, and that is how you really whittle down your process in the beginning. It's looking at those easy steps where you know what you can easily define what your expectation is, and then you set that expectation, and you make sure your people follow through. And when you do so, that's when you can start focusing on the bigger things, the bigger challenges that might be coming up. But first things first, you need to focus on those controllables, because that's where you're going to most easily be able to shave down the most immediate time from your process. It's the little things that you want to look for first, and then expand your scope outward once you know you have those things in place.
Yes, great, Steve McDonough. Do your most efficient stores have dedicated used mechanic? Yes.
100%
One of the
yes.
golden rules: have a dedicated team. Oh, but we only do 30 cars. Well, so yes,
Have two
have a
guys.
dedicated team. Have
Yeah,
one guy, two guys. You got to have, that's a best practice. An internal writer, a dedicated team of technicians based on your volume. That could be two, three guys. 100%. Great question, Steve. I appreciate that. This is a good presentation. Are the previous episodes available as well as recorded sessions?
yes.
Yes, there are some previous. Yeah, we have previous
All
recordings.
except the
However,
last one.
this is our first time using this platform. So I love it. I love the Q&A in here. Um, and can Josh share the slides? Yes, Josh can share the slides. Josh, are you able to see these questions, or you got your thing on full?
I've just got the one screen on right now, so no.
Okay.
But I'm
Hey, yeah,
loving it that we're getting these questions.
Tony, if you want to put your email in there, we'll be happy to get it to you. So, how would we find the other sessions? That's a
YouTube.
great YouTube. Okay,
Yep, we're on YouTube,
cool.
and then if possible, Shelly or Rachel, could you throw up the pod? You can go ahead and stop my share if you want. Could you throw up the pod for our YouTube link or something like that? I don't know if we have that. It's okay if we don't. We can just send it out. Well, we'll send it out in the post marketing actually. So
Okay,
everyone who's part of this podcast right now, who's on live, you guys will all get a follow up link from us, and that will I'll include both the podcast here, or I should say, I'll include both the presentation here, the recording of this podcast, as well as the link to our YouTube channel where you can find all of the previous videos we've made.
love it. And I appreciate that whoever the polls. I saw the poll over there, Josh. Did you create that poll?
Yeah, I've
The
created.
poll questions. That's
Yeah, I
great.
created those polls. Have we deployed them? I hope we have.
Yeah, and people, we got percentages that were chiming in, so I think we captured some feedback from the audience here. Guys, this is great,
Excellent.
man. I appreciate you chiming in with your questions. I'd love to go all day on some of this stuff. I get all fired up. My blood pressure probably can't handle it, but we like to keep it to about 30 minutes, and we do it the third Thursday of every month. Correct, Josh?
That's right. Third Thursday of every month, we're going to have another All Things Recon podcast. And I think one of the questions we asked was what should be the next topic. So that we'll decide based on how you voted so far, y'all.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate everyone joining us. It's really awesome to be on this new platform and have all this participation from everyone who's been a part so far.
Yep. Good stuff, guys. All right, folks. Well, Josh, I guess we wrap it up. I appreciate everybody's time. Josh, you got any closing comments? We good?
No, I look forward. I hope hopefully we'll see everyone here again, and feel free to participate anytime, y'all.
All right, guys. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.